control. I got Satan on my trail, but I'm singing.
Welcome back to Kingdom Warfare with Lucretia. I am your host, Lucretia Shaw, founder and visionary of Lucretia's Kingdom Legacy, a kingdom-driven platform built to equip, empower, and elevate individuals into purpose, clarity, and calling. I am an author, Christian publisher, and coach. And through Consult Authors Publishing, I help visionaries, leaders, and storytellers turn God-given ideas into published works and kingdom impact. This podcast is your war room. This is a space for men and women in the trenches who are fighting battles of faith, purpose, identity, and alignment. And here we talk about discernment. We talk about spiritual posture, and we learn how to stand fully armored in every season. And through our impact arm, the Destiny Protective Initiative, we go beyond conversation into compassion, partnering with donors and sponsors to support young girls with sanitary napkins and personal hygiene supplies, because dignity and destiny matter in the kingdom. So wherever you tuning in from tonight, welcome to the wall. Suit up, stay watchful, and stay faithful. Because tonight, we're stepping into a conversation that many people don't realize. Because this is my final episode of April. And all month long, I've been exposing one of the greatest hidden battles many people face, and that's warfare of the mind. We talked about mental fatigue. We talked about anxiety. We talked about fear. We talked about overthinking. We talked about thought patterns. We talked about internal battles that no one else can see. But tonight, we're going to shift from defense to offense. Tonight is not just about surviving mental warfare. It's about learning how a renewed mind becomes your weapon. And this is something that we most definitely got to understand, because hear me clearly. I want you guys to hear me clearly tonight, because this is something that a lot of people kind of, we don't get it right? And your mind was never created to remain a battlefield, okay? It was created to become a place of peace, a place of power, a place of discernment, a place of wisdom, a place of authority, a place of authority, right? And many people are praying for a breakthrough while still thinking from old pain. They're praying for new doors while carrying old mindsets. They're praying for change while agreeing with old thoughts. But tonight, we're dealing with that, because transformation does not begin around you. It begins within you. Now, Romans 12:2 says, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. That means when the mind changes, everything begins to shift. Your reaction shifts, your confidence shifts, your peace shifts, your decisions shift, and your future shifts. So tonight we're going to talk about why the enemy fights your mind so hard, how old thought patterns keep people stuck, and why a renewed mind becomes spiritual power, and how peace, clarity, and discipline become weapons, and how to think from healing instead of wounds. So get ready, because tonight we're claiming the mind. So before a renewed mind can become a weapon, we must first understand why the enemy targets it so aggressively. Because if you don't understand the attack, you may never recognize your power. So I want to begin there. Because the enemy fights your mind, because your mind influences everything. It influences your choices, your emotions, your relationships, your discipline, your obedience, your confidence, your identity, and your ability to hear God clearly. Now, before many people ever lose a battle outwardly, they first lose it inwardly in their thoughts. Because if the enemy can disturb your thinking, he can delay your movement. And if he can fill your mind with fear, he can reduce your boldness. And if he can keep you mentally tired, he can weaken your consistency. If he can keep you in confusion, he can make you question what God already spoke. This is why the attack often comes through confusion, fear, self-doubt, anxiety, distraction, negative loops, comparison, old memories, past wounds, imaginary worst case scenarios, and the list goes on. Because if your mind stays unstable, your life often follows it. And I want to ask some real questions tonight because I love asking questions. Have you ever had a clear direction from God, but then your mind started talking you out of it? Listen, I want some engagement tonight. Let's engage. Let's talk about it. Have you ever felt confident one moment and then suddenly doubt came in and made you question everything? Have you ever been about to move forward, but fear whispered, "What if you fail?" That's warfare. Because the enemy does not always need to stop your assignment. Sometimes he just needs to make you second guess long enough for you to delay it yourself. And this is why guarding your mind is so serious, especially in this season. Because your mind is not just where the thoughts happen, it's where agreement happens. And what you agree with begins to shape what you believe. What you believe begins to shape how you move. And how you move begins to shape what you build. So if the enemy can get you to agree with fear, you will move cautiously where God called you to move boldly. God did not give us a spirit of fear. And if the enemy can get you to agree with rejection, you will push away people God may have assigned to help you. And if he can get you to agree with lack, guess what? You're going to shrink your vision to match your fear. If he can agree, listen, I'm on to something tonight. If he can get you to agree with shame, you're going to hide when God is calling you to rise. But I want everybody that's listening out there to hear this. The attack reveals value. And the reason the mind is targeted so much is because of what it can become when healed. A renewed mind becomes dangerous to darkness. Because once you think clearly, you stop agreeing with lies. And once you think clearly, you stop shrinking. Once you think clearly, listen to me, y'all, you stop calling fear wisdom. And once you think clearly, you stop letting old wounds define new seasons. Once you think clearly, you start moving with authority. Let me say this. A renewed mind can discern what is God and what is not. A renewed mind can reject panic and choose peace. A renewed mind can hear instruction without being ruled by emotion. And a renewed mind can walk into pressure and still remain anchored. Listen, I'm talking to somebody. I know I'm talking to myself, but I know I'm talking to somebody else out there that's listening, because this is why the enemy fights it. Because he knows if your mind gets renewed, your life starts changing. Romans 12:2 says, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." That means transformation is connected to renewal. I know y'all probably heard, if you change your mind, you change your life. I know y'all probably heard that saying before. And when the transformation comes, listen, that's not just in prayer. That's not just prayer. That's not just desire. That's not just emotion, but renewal. Because some people are praying for a new life while still thinking from an old place. You praying for peace while you rehearsing fear. You praying for confidence while agreeing with insecurity. You praying for provision while still thinking from lack. You praying for healing while still identifying with the wound. But when your mind is renewed, the inner agreement, it changes. And you stop saying, I can't. You start saying, God will strengthen me. You stop saying it's too late. You start saying, God restores time. You stop saying, I'm not enough. You start saying, God equips who he calls. You stop saying, I'm losing my mind. You start saying, I have a sound mind. That shift is warfare. Because the renewed mind does not just think differently, it fights differently. So if your mind has been under attack, that does not mean you are weak. It may mean you are powerful. It may mean there is something inside of you that the enemy wants distracted, delayed, confused, or discouraged. But tonight, I'm calling it what it is. This is warfare. And if the battle is in the mind, then the victory must begin in the mind too. Listen, a lot of y'all are fighting these battles. You don't even know that you're in a warfare. Your mind does not have to stay overwhelmed. Your thoughts do not have to stay scattered. And your peace does not have to stay under attack, because a renewed mind becomes a weapon in the hands of God. Listen, I wrote a book called Be Ye Transformed by the Renewing of the Mind. So now that we understand why the mind is targeted, let's go. I want to go a little bit deeper tonight, because one of the greatest ways people stay stuck is not always through what is happening around them. Sometimes it is through old thought patterns still operating inside of them, like old fear, you got old rejection, you got old survival thinking, you got old shame, you got old memories that keep influencing present situations and decisions. And this is where we have to be honest. We got to be honest with ourselves, because some people are in a new season, but they still thinking from an old wound. So I want to take you into segment 2, how old thought patterns keep you bound. Now, many people are asking God for a new season, because I want to tell y'all something. Seasons do change, but you're still thinking from an old mindset. They want new doors, but they still carrying old fear. They want healthy relationships, but still thinking through old betrayal. They want growth, but they still think through old failure. They want peace, but still process life through old trauma. And this is where many people become frustrated, because externally things may be changing, but internally the mindset has not caught up yet. So what happens? The old thinking sabotages the new season, because if your environment changes, but your patterns don't, you can repeat old cycles in brand new places. Listen, I was a person where I got tired of repeating repetitive cycles until I had to learn. And let me say that again. You can carry an old prison into a new opportunity. This is why some people finally receive what they prayed for and they still can't enjoy it. They finally get their relationship, but guess what? Suspicion is following them in. They finally get the opportunity, but insecurity follows them in. They finally get the blessing, but chaos still, but the fear of losing, it follows them in, right? They finally get the peace around them, but guess what? Chaos still lives within them. That is the power of unresolved thought patterns, because thoughts become filters, and filters shape your perception. If your filter is rejection, you may misread genuine people. If your filter is failure, you may assume you'll lose before you even begin. If your filter is abandonment, you may push people away before they can even get close to you. If your filter is scarcity, you may shrink every dream to fit your fear. If your filter is shame, you may hide in places where God wants you visible. I want to ask something real honestly to anybody out there listening that may be dealing with this. Are you responding to what is happening now? Or are you reacting to what happened then? Like, because many people are not living in the present, they are reliving the past through present moments. That's why a small delay kind of it feels huge. This is why constructive feedback feels like rejection. This is why a disagreement feels like abandonment. This is why uncertainty feels like danger, because that old wound is still interpreting the new moment. And when wounds become lenses, clarity suffers. I want to take y'all a little bit deeper tonight. Listen, I'm going out of April with a bang. I'm going out of April with a bang because I want to go a little bit deeper. Because this month we've talked about warfare of the mind. Listen, the mind is a powerful thing to waste. Old thought patterns are usually built in seasons of survival. Times when you had to protect yourself, times when you had to expect disappointment, times when you had to stay guarded, right? And times when you had to carry everything alone. And while those patterns may have helped you survive then, they may now be hurting your growth now. Because survival thinking, it says, trust nobody, expect the worst, handle it all alone, stay small so you don't get hurt, don't hope too much, and never let your guard down, right? But let me tell y'all what healing can do. Because I'm on the other side now. I was once in that place where I felt that same, I had survival thinking, but God had to allow me to go through some things to get to the other side. Healing thinking says, use discernment and not fear. Trust God while being wise. Healthy support matters. Growth requires courage. You got to be able to hope again, and peace can be safe, y'all. Do you see the difference in that? One mindset protects pain. The other mindset, it builds a future. And many people are loyal to the mindset that keep them alive, even when it is now keeping them stuck. That's a little bit deep. Because sometimes we become attached to thought patterns simply because they are familiar, not because they are healthy. Listen, some people are attached to struggle because struggle feels normal, right? They attach to chaos because peace feels unfamiliar. They attach to overthinking because silence feels uncomfortable. They attach to guarding because vulnerability feels risky. But familiar does not always mean healthy. And just because something helped you once does not mean it should lead you forever. So let me ask y'all. I love asking questions out there. Listen, let's engage. Put the questions. Tell me how you feel. What's on your mind tonight? What thought pattern have you normalized that is no longer serving who you are becoming? Because growth requires grieving old versions of yourself. The version that lived in fear, the version that expected loss, the version that called anxiety wisdom, and the version that believed struggle was permanent. Listen, those versions may deserve compassion, but they do not deserve leadership anymore. You can honor what you survive without staying mentally stuck there. And I want to take you guys a little bit deeper spiritually, because the enemy loves old thought patterns because they do his work without fresh effort. Now, if the enemy can keep yesterday's lie active in today's mind, he doesn't have to create a new attack. If he can keep old insecurity talking, he doesn't need a new voice. If he can keep shame replaying over and over and over again, guess what? He don't need a new wound. This is why renewal matters, because renewal interrupts inherited patterns, survival patterns, and self-defeating cycles. Again, look, we stuck on Romans 12 and 2. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Do you not know people are out here losing their minds? Transformation happens when old agreements are broken. When you stop agreeing with, oh, I'm just this way, or I always be like this, nothing good lasts, I'm too damaged, or I can't change, or I always ruin things. But I want you to start agreeing with the truth. Because guess what? You can heal, you can grow, you can think differently, you can receive good things. God can renew what pain tried to distort. That is how chains break mentally, not just by changing circumstances, but by changing agreements. You cannot fully enter a new season with loyalty to an old mindset. You cannot enjoy peace while still thinking from chaos. You cannot build confidence while still agreeing with rejection. And guess what? You cannot walk in freedom while mentally serving old pain. Some doors don't require a key, they require a renewed mind. And when that old pattern loses authority, your new season can finally breathe. So, guess what? Now, the question becomes, what does renewal look like? You might say, Christian, what does renewal actually look like? Because renewal is more than positive thinking, it is more than motivation, it is more than saying affirmations where I secretly believe in lies. Renewal is transformation. It changes how you think, how you respond, how you recover, and how you move. So, in this next segment, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into what a renewed mind actually produces in your life. Now that we've exposed how old thought patterns keep people bound, I want to talk about what happens when the mind is renewed. Because renewal is not just something you say happen, right? Renewal produces evidence. You begin to see it in your responses. You begin to feel it in your peace. You begin to notice it in your choices. You begin to recognize it in what no longer controls you. Listen, a renewed mind changes the quality of your inner life. And when the inner life changes, the outer life eventually follows. Because many people, they want visible change, but visible change often begins with invisible renewal. Let me say that again. Before your circumstances shift, your thinking often must shift first. So, what does a renewed mind produce? You may ask. Listen, let's go a little bit deeper. So, a renewed mind produces peace. One of the first signs of renewal, it is peace. Not the kind of peace that depends on everything going right, but the kind of peace that remains even when life is still unfinished. Because before renewal, many people they panic quickly. Every delay feels dangerous, every closed door feels final, every inconvenience feels overwhelming, right? But when the mind is renewed, you stop interpreting everything as a threat. You stop assuming every challenge means disaster. You begin to breathe differently. You respond differently. You wait differently. And guess what? Peace becomes your default more than panic. Isaiah 26:3 says, thou will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. Listen, notice this. Peace is tied to where the mind stays. A renewed mind learns how to stay anchored. Number two, look, a renewed mind produces clarity. Fear clouds judgment, right? Overthinking, it creates a fog. Anxiety, it scatters your focus. But let me say this, renewal restores clarity. You begin to think straighter. You stop confusing urgency with assignment. You stop chasing everything. You start reacting emotionally to every little voice. And get what you do. You begin to discern what matters, what doesn't matter, what is for now, what is for later, what belongs to you, and what does not belong to you. Some people don't need more information, they need less mental clutter. Because once that clutter leaves, guess what? Clarity returns. So let me ask this question: how many decisions became harder because your mind was overcrowded? Renewal creates internal order, and order makes direction easier to recognize. Number three, a renewed mind produces discipline. Now, this here is powerful because many people think discipline starts with behavior, but often discipline starts with thought. If the mind is chaotic, your actions going to become inconsistent. And if your mind is unstable, guess what's going to happen? Your habits become fragile. If the mind is ruled by emotion, consistency becomes difficult. But when your mind is renewed, you stop needing to feel like it all the time. Like you become steadier. You begin honoring your commitments. You follow through more often. You become less impulsive. You become less ruled by your moods. Like a renewed mind helps you choose purpose over impulse. That is warfare. Because some cycles don't break through emotion, they break through disciplined thinking. And then not only that, look, a renewed mind produces confidence. Your old thinking gonna say, look, I'm not enough. I'll probably fail. Oh, they better than me, or it's too late. But a renewed mind, your renewed thinking says, God can strengthen me. I can learn. I don't need to compare. It is not over. Confidence is not arrogance. Confidence is internal agreement with the truth. It is when you stop partnering with thoughts that minimize you. It is when you stop apologizing for growing. Do not apologize for your growth or outgrowing. It is when you stop shrinking in rooms God opened for you. So let me ask this question: how much confidence was buried under old thoughts? Because sometimes your confidence was never absent, it was suffocated. Mm. Renewal helps it breathe again. Listen, y'all better listen. Listen to it. Listen to me now. I'm trying to help somebody tonight. A renewed mind produces emotional stability. It's so many people out here that are emotionally unstable. This is maturity many people overlook. Before renewal, some people are emotionally moved by everything. Every comment, it shifts them. Every delay frustrates them. Every opinion shakes them. Every inconvenience drains them. But when the mind is renewed, you become less reactive. Like you stop giving small things big power. You pause before responding and you stop absorbing everything emotionally. Stability becomes your weapon. Because when you are not easily shaken by what's going on around you, you are harder to manipulate. When you are not emotionally volatile, you are harder to distract. Man, that's strength within itself. A renewed mind produces better relationships. Look, I'm gonna take y'all way a little bit deeper. I told y'all I'm going out April with a bang. I'm going out April with a bang. Your thought patterns affect relationships. If the mind expects rejection, you may misread people. If your mind expects betrayal, you're going to sabotage trust. If your mind is insecure, you may compare constantly. This is where a lot of people who are in relationships, and I see this all the time, they are not healed. It's all in the mind. But renewal changes how you relate to people. You communicate healthier, you set better boundaries, you stop projecting old pain onto new people. I gotta say that again. So many people are out there projecting old pain onto new people. You stop demanding others heal wounds only God can address. Let me tell y'all something. It's so many people out here, and I've seen this today. I see this, social media. People put their business on social media, marriage issues, all kind of things goes on. And you can see the pain, the wounds when people make these live videos. I mean, I'm just going by what I see spiritually, because a lot of people are operating and projecting pain and trauma onto new people. That's causing more pain. But a renewed mind doesn't just bless you, it blesses those connected to you. Guess what? A renewed mind produces spiritual sensitivity. Noise blocks discernment. Fear distorts your hearing, and mental chaos can drown out instruction. But when your mind is renewed, guess what? You hear more clearly. You sense red flags quicker. Listen, I'm telling you, I can spot a red flag from a mile away. Y'all better stop overlooking red flags. I understand everybody's not perfect. Nobody is perfect. Everybody has imperfections, but are you overlooking a red flag? Mm-hmm. You recognize peace as guidance. You know when to move. You know when to wait. You know when something is off. Some people say they need louder signs, but often they need a quieter mind, because discernment thrives in inner clarity. Listen, discernment is crucial. And I've seen this personally. There are seasons where pressure can make you think differently if you let it. Stress can make you reactive. Disappointment can make you guarded. Delay can make you doubtful. But every time I return to truth, every time I realign my thinking, every time I chose peace over panic, something was produced. I got more clarity. I got more steadiness. I got more wisdom. I got more strength. Maybe not instantly now, but consistently, because that matters. When your mind changes, your responses change. And when your responses change, your outcomes begin to change, because life is often shaped not only by what happens to you, but by how you think through what happens to you. A renewed mind produces a stronger life. Peace where panic used to live, clarity where confusion used to reign, confidence where fear once sat. That is evidence of transformation. Now let's bring this home. Let's bring it home. Because renewal is not just something you experience once, it's something you practice on a daily basis. Because a renewed mind becomes powerful when it is used consistently. So, in this final segment, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into how to use a renewed mind as your weapon every single day. So let's step into this final segment. How to use a renewed mind as your weapon daily. The Bible tells us to renew our minds on a daily basis. Because a renewed mind is not just something you experience during a powerful moment. It is not just something you feel during prayer. It is not just something you hear in a podcast episode and you admire. But a renewed mind becomes powerful when it is practiced daily. Because let me tell y'all something, the battle for your mind is not monthly, it is not occasional, it is daily. Every morning, there is a battle for your agreement. Will you agree with fear or are you going to agree with truth? Will you agree with pressure or are you going to agree with peace? Will you agree with those old wounds or are you going to, or present healing? Will you agree with limitation or possibility? Will you agree with what happened before or what God is doing now? Like that matters because what your mind repeatedly agrees with, eventually it shapes how your life repeatedly moves. So, how do you use a renewed mind as your weapon daily? Cretia, you may ask. Let's go a little bit deeper. Reject thoughts that do not belong to you. Because let me say this, not every thought that enters your mind deserves a seat. Not every thought deserves your attention. Not every thought deserves your agreement. Some thoughts are invitations to fear. Some thoughts are echoes of old wounds. Some thoughts are distortions created by stress. Some thoughts are simply habits of negative thinking. Listen, y'all, and many people lose peace because they entertain those thoughts. They should have challenged them immediately. And let me say this, access is not ownership. Just because a thought enter your mind does not mean it belongs there. And you got to learn to ask yourself, is this true? Or,